Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Beeson and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk Coachella fashion, specifically performance fashion. I've always found performance looks with things like Coachella to be more exciting and more interesting than what is being worn by people that attend the festivals. I've just not really gotten into like the whole festival fashion thing, but the performance stuff is always interesting, and especially something like Coachella, there's always going to be a moment on stage, and for this Coachella we definitely had it. So this video is going to be a little review on some of the looks from both weekend 1 and weekend 2, kind of the same artists for both weekends. That's what I kind of stuck with, and I also have some moments that are obviously being talked about the most, a part of my list as well. But without further ado, let's just get right into the video. So we're gonna start with Mother Monster herself, Lady Gaga, and first just the designers that were a part of the 8 or 9 looks that she wore for her set. It include Samuel Lewis, Seth Pratt, Athena Lawton, William Ramsar, Louis Verdad. Marnie was a part of it as well. Delaria Fintiklogu was also in there, and then Fecal Matter was the designer for the encore look at the very end. And the other little fashion thing about this set was that there was a little bit of a tribute to Alexander McQueen, and the two things that are the most obvious are the references to the 2005 show with the chess board that she used for a scene, and then the fall 2003 show that was during the paparazzi look with the like flowy wing cape type thing. Those are two obvious Alexander McQueen moments that were very interesting and just added a whole depth to the set in both fashion and just the storytelling. But as for the looks in total, I thought the entire spread of looks was amazing. It was telling a story, and obviously the entire production of the set list and just how she did the concerts were for the Mayhem tour that's coming in the Mayhem era that she is in. So there was a huge amount of storytelling throughout it. I mean, the set design itself, like there were 2 levels to it and there was so much going on to it. The performance had acts to it, which warranted having like those switch up with the changing in the outfits. Some of the looks she had, you know, short black hair, and then others she had her blonde hair, and there was just a good mixture of like storytelling through fashion and the scenes as she went through the set list of music. Obviously the entrance look was quite the spectacle, with it being a huge opera skirt thing. I'm gonna say out of the 2 red looks, that one is my least favorite, but I still like it. But just the red look that came after it, that's more of like a satiny fabric. It has a little bit more of a not so dramatic embellishment with like the things on the necks and all of that stuff. I just loved that one a little bit more, but I thought both red looks were very good, and obviously that is a way to open the show with this massive 2-story just look that was just crazy. And then moving from the red looks into the little black number, I thought that was just a really good, simple look, and I believe that was the look that was a part of the chessboard scene. But I love that it was just simple pair of black boots with the black little lingerie type set, and then the veil, which honestly the veil was my favorite part of the look. I just thought it brought it all together, but I just love that it's so simple. And then we move into blonde hair Gaga, and we get both the paparazzi look and then the one with the sandbox, which had the Delaria dress, and I loved this dress. I thought it was so cute. I love that it's, you know, more of a white color, very, you know, kind of frilly, but it's like in a tattered and kind of torn and segmented kind of frilly, so there was still some edge to it that went along with the story, and then putting on the crutches and all that stuff, and then the other Alexander McQueen reference with the extra fabric behind was also, to me, it was obviously a fashion moment, but to me I felt like it was more of just like an iconic moment of calling back to something that is from the very beginning of her career. So for me, I did like the dress by itself more so than seeing like the crutches and the extra fabric, but again, it all worked. And then the Marnie catsuit, and then there was also like a fluffy jacket that went with it. The catsuit is the only thing that I didn't really love. I didn't really like the black, which was obviously the main part of the design of it, with a little bit of blue, but it just wasn't my favorite, and I felt like it was kind of out of place a little bit, for me at least. But when you move into the next look where you put the bigger blue coat and the black headpiece with that catsuit, I feel like it made more sense. And it's not because it's like mostly covered up, but I think because the black detailing, especially on the legs where you can see it with the coat, I thought it just made more sense with the big blue coat that had the gold rib details and all the other stuff on the front panelings, and then having the black, so going black, blue, you know, black, and then black with the shoe. Like, it just made a little bit more sense to me. So the Marnie look was really the only look that I didn't particularly love as a whole. And then probably my favorite look of the entire thing was the gray, like tailored look that had the black straps to it. I thought that one was super cool. It felt very different from the rest of the fashion lineup, just considering that it didn't really have the same kind of theatrical design edge that the rest of the looks did, but it did feel like it still worked. And I did love that it kind of felt like Rhythm Nation a little bit, with like Janet Jackson. And obviously one of the songs that was performed in this look was Shadow of Man, which sounds like a Michael Jackson song. So that outfit in its totality to me felt very Jackson, whether it's Janet or Michael. There's just something about it that made it in my brain. That's what I registered it as. But I loved this look. And then of course the encore look from Fecal Matter. I loved this look. I just liked how much of a story it was telling. And if you look at the fabric and you look at all the different fabrications, there's so much texture to it. There's like the feathers that are obviously the most obvious, and then there's different like silk fabrics and chiffons and things like that, and then there's exposed boning, and then there's the bodysuit underneath. That's a different type of fabric, and then there's the red detailing on there as well. I just think it's a very interesting look and a very good closing look, considering the top and the bottom of the performances had the most extravagant and most dramatic looks, and I think that works. The only issue that I have with the encore look, and this is purely a personal thing, is I don't really like the fingers. They're kind of creepy to me, and I just don't like that kind of stuff. But it works for like the whole look in total, just not for me. But when you look at the spectrum of all of these looks, Lady Gaga did exactly what we expected, which is to put on an amazingly produced show that was so good, telling a story, having the fashion, having the drama, because that's what we are used to seeing with Lady Gaga. And this was of course no different. And I think on the fashion level, all of the looks worked. They told a story. I think all of the designers that were in collaboration to create each of these looks did a really good job, and I think this is a very good fashion viewpoint for the Mayhem era that we are now just full throttle moving into, and I really enjoyed the looks. The next one I want to talk about is Miss Lisa, and it's not Lisa of Blackpink, it's just Lisa. This was one of her biggest solo performances since the Blackpink group went on break, and I'm very familiar with Blackpink. I'm familiar with Lisa and Jennie and Rose and Jisoo, so I was excited to see both Lisa and Jennie, who we'll talk about next, perform and do something so big on their own. But as for Lisa herself, she wore looks from Brett Allen Nelson, Asher Levine, Xana Bain, Michael Schmidt Studios, GCDS, Off-White, and Swarovski. Those were all of the over-branching designers, and some of them worked on multiple things, and then some of them only maybe did one look, but she kind of stuck to a pretty condensed design list for her 4 looks for each weekend outfit catalog, basically. But looking at the totality of the entire thing, I knew the production was going to be great. I knew her as a performer, she was going to be very good, because that's who she is. She's very good at it. And I was excited to see the fashion stuff. The show obviously opened with the big giant raising from the ground and the big, like, either super dark gray or black, depending on which weekend, I think. Big giant puffer coat that was covering like the actual look that was going to be like a wow moment. For me, I thought the coat was fine. The first thing I thought of was it was probably super hot, especially with the catsuit she was wearing under it, but I thought it worked for the way that they were opening the show. But then you take the coat off and she's wearing, regardless of which weekend, she's wearing this crazy reptilian catsuit thing that is just visually wild to look at. The weekend 1 was in the silver color, and then weekend 2 was in the red. Personally, I like the red better. It's just a prettier color than the silver, and I think there's a little bit more depth to that color, and it just looks more interesting in the red. I don't know why the color would make all that much of a difference with something like this, but it does. But I thought it was super cool, and like the detail work of it, it worked for the part of the show that she wore it for. And then moving into the 2 next looks, but they have like 2 stages to them. But the looks were like a crop top, tiny short with a jacket kind of thing. One was a complete red with like silver detailing, and then the other was baseline black but with a bunch of color to it, all of like kind of like Jackson Pollock like paint, and then some jewels and stuff with it. But the jacket was on both looks for a period of time, and they had these like light shoulder pads, like literal lights, but like as kind of like shoulder pads. And I'm gonna say that's my least favorite part of both of those looks. It adds to the theatrics of it. I just didn't particularly love it. If those weren't there and it was just the jacket with the top bottom, I would have loved it a lot more, but I get adding a little something to it. It's just, I didn't love it too much. And then you take the jackets off, and then you get to actually see the tops a little bit more. Personally, I liked the red look with like the Rockstar logo on that top and the way that the leather was cut, and I loved like the leather belt short. I just thought that one was, to me, it was cooler, but I also liked the super colorful one. I love that there was a bunch of color and there were Swarovski crystals on that too, but the red one for sure was more my speed. And then for both weekends, the next look is the crazy light up look that looks more interesting up close than it does from far away. There's a lot more detail work to the bodysuit the closer you can get a picture of. But the most interesting thing to me were the actual lights. I love the shape of it. And obviously when the lights go down, you get that intensity with the lights. It's a super pretty, and it's a very like innovative kind of cool look. I think it's definitely not my favorite of the group, but it is very cool looking. And I like that Lisa and her team went a more interesting and almost extravagant route with having some light to it and adding just some interesting aspects other than just having some outfits. So I liked that. The lights were cool. It just, out of all of them, it wasn't my favorite. And then the last 2 looks were the most like Lisa to me, because I've seen her in stuff like this. One weekend was a very graphic, very light, bright colored look, and then second weekend was the off-white look with the Swarovski. I loved both of these looks. I think I prefer the super colorful one versus the off-white one, but that's not saying much since I love both of them. I just like the color of the first one, and I liked the fit of everything. I like that it's just like a little crop top with the little skirt, and I love the matching boots. And then on the off-white one, I love that this skirt is a little pleated skirt, and then the top has a little bit more corseting with the like the white t-shirt under it, and then obviously it has like that little extra part. I just loved both of these looks the best. They were definitely my favorites and the most Lisa to me, because they do kind of look a little bit like what she would wear for Blackpink. It's definitely just like her style, but I just loved it. But overall, she did a very good job with her looks, and she gave good kind of little fashion moments for both weekends, regardless of which version you're looking at. And it went along with her very, very good performance. She's very good on stage. She's a performer. She like, you know, she's a dancer and all that stuff. She knows how to put on a very good performance, and I think the fashion just helped with that. And I think Lisa did a very good job for her solo Coachella performances. And now we're going to talk about Jennie and what I like about her fashion choices for her Coachella sets, as this being her first huge solo endeavor, is that she went much more simple with her fashion choices, where Lisa had 4 different looks and there were like, you know, LEDs and stuff to it, which I'm not knocking and I'm not comparing. I'm just saying like there is like, she went busier, which totally worked for her, but I liked that Jennie went simple and just had one look as the base look and basically just changed it up, either like the jacket that she was wearing or maybe like the short that she was wearing, but from everything else it was a baseline look. And for weekend 1, she was wearing custom George's Hobeca, and then there was also a Kim Shu leather jacket, and then an Acne Studios jacket, and then the boots that she was wearing were DD boots. And then for weekend 2, she was wearing Mugler from 1992. But for weekend 1 first, I loved, first of all, like the baseline look, which was the red crocodile look. That was the top with the short and then the really big belts that were on it, and then obviously those tan boots. That was a very good baseline look. It's very Jennie from what she's been doing with all of her Ruby stuff. I like the styling. It's very simple, but it is still very fashion, and I just love that baseline look. And then obviously she came out with the matching jacket to go with that, like still the red crocodile, and then the cowboy hat and the sunglasses. I love that little getup. I thought that was very cute. My favorite variation of it was the long patent red trench coat that went with it. I loved that variation. I just loved the trench coat, and but like the color across the board, this red color, I loved, and I was very obsessed with it. But I just love the variation with the base look and then that trench, and then having her hair, which is obviously black, mixed all in together. I just loved the visual of it. Technically my least favorite variation was when she swapped out the short for a different skirt that had different fabrication on the red, and then it kind of had lacy fabric falling down it. It was just my least favorite variation. She still looked very good. I preferred the short with the belts. And then she closed out the first weekend with a pretty like standard shape when it comes to like a bomber jacket, but it's also red, and I liked it. It was just very casual. But for weekend 1, my favorite look was the base look with the trench coat. I just loved it. And as for weekend 2 with the Mugler look, the baseline look was the Mugler look from 92. It's the black top that goes into like it's like a train, but it's part of the top, but it's kind of like a train, and then the red short to go with it. I think it might have also been the boots, but I can't remember. So that's the baseline look for the Mugler look, which she did wear just that look at some point, and I absolutely loved it. It's, you know, it's Mugler, so I love it. But the first version of it is a rendition of what she did the first weekend. So she had a cowboy hat, she had sunglasses, and she had more of like a biker leather jacket, a more cropped version with gloves for the opening look. And I like this one. It was very dramatic. I think both of the cowboy hat looks had some drama to it, which I think obviously she was probably going for, and I liked it. And then she eventually took the hat, the sunglasses, and the jacket off to just the Mugler look. And then she at some point took off a piece of the top, basically the whole like train part of the Mugler look, so it was just the like the vest with the buckles and then the red. And I honestly liked that version the most, because to me that's the most like Jennie looking, so I love that version. And then there was also a version where she swapped the short for a leather skirt that had some fabric added to it, and I liked that version compared to the first weekend where it was the more frilly, fabric-y, lacy skirt. This one to me was just the better version. And then she rounded it out with a leather jacket that looked still a little bit more on like the biker motocross kind of thing, and I like that jacket too. But for me, I think in general the Mugler look was very good, and I'll take it with or without the extra like skirt train thing. But I think Jennie did a very good job both weekends. I liked that they were both different, where the first weekend was basically just red and then the second weekend was red and black. I liked that, and obviously with her album being called Ruby, it makes sense for the storyline to be on the red side. And I just loved her performance looks. I loved how she went a little bit more simple and just did little variations, and I thought the performance was also very good. And it was a good showing for her first big solo project stage. And so the rest of these looks are just going to be different performers from both weekends, whether it's both of the looks or some of the looks. So first looks I want to talk about are Tyla's looks. There was the Dolce & Gabbana look, I think the first weekend, with the white and then the red and like the gold with the kind of the tights that were destroyed. And then the green look for this past weekend. I'm gonna be honest that with both of these looks, I didn't love it. I didn't like either one too much. They fit her aesthetic, so like they totally work for her and how she does things, and I'm pretty used to these types of looks for her, so I wasn't at all shocked by any of these looks. I just didn't love them, if I'm being blatantly honest. I thought her makeup was stunning. I thought like she looked gorgeous, but this type of aesthetic and this type of styling isn't for me. I could appreciate it with other people when they wear it, but for me, I didn't love it, and so I didn't really love these two looks, if I'm being honest. But I did like the pink nails, and I especially liked the pink makeup for the green look. I thought that was a good contrast, but overall, didn't love either one. And then Becky G for two looks. She had one look that I think was part of Tyla's performance. It was the like yellow white one. It looked like there were some like lace tying and some, it kind of looked like the strings of like bikini bottoms and stuff like that. I definitely liked this look better than, if it was with the Tyla performance, better than the Tyla look. I thought the yellow on her was very good. I liked the detail work. I liked that it was kind of a thrown together look and there were lots of layers with the fabrics, but it all meshed together and it all felt really cohesive. And then the additive of the fur boot was very cute. I definitely liked this yellow number, especially with this type of styling. This one was definitely one of my more favorite looks for this type of aesthetic. And then she had a performance where she was wearing this super pretty, I love this look, this white look. It was almost ethereal, from a brand called Defiance, and I can't say anything other than I absolutely love this. I love how flowy it was. I love the little metal details on the top, and then I just liked how it's super airy, it just moves, and it felt so pretty and it looks so pretty. And I love that her hair was pulled back for it to really let the outfit be the thing that shines. I just thought this was so pretty, and I don't really recall ever seeing anything that looks like it for any other performance, so I like that this was a little bit different, but I just loved this look. And then we're gonna talk about Marina. So for weekend 1, she wore a look by Eric Charlotte, and this is more of like, I don't know, kind of gave like modern Antoinette vibes. I think it goes with like her newest single or something like that, but I really liked this. I loved the pink top, and I liked the way that the bubble skirt, but not total bubble skirt, was. I thought the styling was interesting. She was wearing like ballerina heels, which I'm not a huge fan of the trend regardless, so I'm not paying too close attention to that particular shoe, but I thought the like look itself was super cool, super pretty. She looked great, and I loved like the blonde to bring it all together. It did kind of give a Marie Antoinette kind of vibe, but I don't know, I thought it's like kind of edgy, but it's cute and it works, and I liked it. And then for weekend 2, she wore a pink look designed by Dennis Blumenstein, and I'm gonna be straight up and just saying I absolutely loved everything about this look. Loved the color. I loved how it was like raw edged on everything. I loved the drape neckline, and then it goes into like the hood thing. I loved the black hair as a contrast. Everything about this look I loved, and I did like this look better than the weekend 1, like kind of more Marie Antoinette type look. As much as I love that one, this one was better. This one is more along the line of what I generally like, and I just loved this look. And next I want to talk about Ravyn Lenae. I apologize if I said her name wrong, but I want to talk about both of her weekend looks. The first one is from Knowles. I think that's how you say it. It's like KNWLS, which in my brain means Knowles. It could totally not be. But she wore Spring Summer 25, and this entire look was described like by her stylist as being like more Renaissance, New Victorian mixed with 2000s Alaya grunge, and I love this look. I love that this look came with like a little like hat. It's not a pillbox, but it's like one of those like little cute little like side hats. I loved that. I love the contrast with the sandy kind of color with the orangey red hair. Loved it. I loved everything about this look. It felt very festival, but it also had some really kind of vintage aesthetics to it. And obviously too, what I liked is the exposed boning was very interesting, and it just broke up the look. And I liked how each part, whether it be the jacket, the bodice, or the skirt, or even the boot, there was all a very obvious texture difference with the fabric, and that just made it more interesting as well. And I just really loved this look. And then the other look was from Fancy Club, and I like that this one had a similar energy as the first weekend, but it was a lot more simple. Obviously it was just the one black color, but it had eyelet detail work, and it was much more simple with just the jacket and the skirt. But I liked that they felt the same. They felt like they could be in the same collection almost in terms of how they were created, and it's just another really good but simple look. And I think I could do like without the shoe part for this look and just the top and the bottom, but as a whole totality look, it's very good. And then the last person I want to talk about is Muni Long, Money Long. I'm not sure how she pronounces the first part of her name. Regardless, first of all, she's stunning. Second of all, the looks that she did for weekend 1 and weekend 2 were designed by Sergio Hudson, and they were inspired by Diana Ross and Mugler and Britney Spears, and I totally see it. But the first look that they did was the kind of like pinky purpley number, and it's just, both looks are just a bodysuit, very thin, and then all of the detail work with the jewels and embellishments create the bikini type look for both looks, whether it's this pink purpley one or the gold look that was for weekend 2. And I loved this purple look. I totally felt Diana. Like the first time I saw this, I was just like, oh my goodness, there's a little Diana Ross in there, and then learning more about it, and that's exactly what they were looking for. And I just loved this pink. It's a very simple look, obviously, with keeping a very thin sheer bodysuit and just having, you know, gemstones and embellishments to create the bikini line was really interesting. But I thought she looked gorgeous, and I thought this pink purple look was super pretty. And then the gold look was pretty too. I definitely prefer the pink and purple one, but it had a little bit more to it. There was a little bit more drama to it with the shape of the gold, and then it had some trickling down with the, I think just on the legs, but there might have been some more on the arms too. So this one had a little bit more going on to it, and it was just as pretty, but I just preferred how clean the pink purple one was. But just like with the first look, she looked stunning with this second look, and I loved how simple the production was with this particular look, and I loved the change up with the hair. I just thought she looked super pretty in both of these little cat suits because they were, you know, very festival, but still had a little bit of something to them for how little there actually was. And I just really liked both of them, but the pink purple was definitely my favorite. And that is the end of my Coachella performance fashion looks review. I picked the main ones that people were talking about, which would obviously be Gaga, Lisa, and Jennie. I feel like they were the most talked about. And then I kind of just sprinkled in other things that I looked forward to seeing, or looks that I were kind of shocked into seeing, or things that I just randomly noticed and was just like, oh, that's cute. That was kind of how I created this list. But these were definitely some of my favorites for the most part from this year's festival. And they're also, of course, my opinion, but I would love to hear yours on what you liked or didn't like about any of the Coachella performance looks. And we had a lot of them this year. Lots of things to look at, lots of things to kind of lots of things to think were super iconic. So I would love to hear your opinion about that. So drop a comment down below for that. But as for right now, this is the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!